Hello everybody, this is Mark with Pelican Wooden Things. Today I'm going to attempt to make a wooden hinge. I've got a project coming up that I would like to use a wood hinge in, so I am going to set up a jig so we can make ourselves a wood hinge from it. The jig is very similar, in fact exactly the same as the hinge for a finger joint. So what you'll need is a nice scrap piece of plywood, and going to end up making a box out of it. So attach a strip of plywood along. This is going to be the back of our jig. And this particular one is going to need some supports on the side. So we've got some more scrap wood here. Just going to cut a couple of supports for the sides. And we'll be constructing our box like so. But first, we have to do some other stuff. We will also need some runners to go into the grooves on the table saw, keep us in line when we make our jig. Go ahead and cut yourself at least 2 short pieces. I'm using 1 long piece because that's what I had, but I'll cut it down to size, like so. And they fit just fine. And we're going to be using our fence here to line up the piece of plywood. Make sure that the back is, or the front is going to be square to the fence and the blade. Remember to run some blue tape here. We're going to be using super glue, and you don't want to get that on the face of your table saw if you can help it. I like to put some washers down into the groove so the runners stand proud, and they will have plenty of good contact with the bottom of the sled. Run a bead of super glue along your runners and some accelerator on the board, and just give it a good push, and they are temporarily stuck there. Add a couple of screws to make sure they stay. And with a little luck, it should run just fine. And there we go. So now, change over to your miter blade. Set yourself up your miter saw blade, and you want it to the thickness of the board that you're going to make the hinge out of. Maybe just a smidgen over, very little if any though. For a hinge you need just a little more room than you do for a box joint, finger joint. Make a test cut, make sure everything is working okay. Fits your sample piece of wood. A little tight, but I'll add a little more shim in there, and we'll make it work. That would be good for a finger joint, but I need just a little bit more space for my hinge. So now we temporarily put the other face of the jig, attach it, and we're going to put it over where the saw blade is and slowly turn the blade up through the box. You want to raise it to the height that is the same thickness as the board you're going to be using for your hinge. Now we need to shift this board over the width of the board we're making the hinge out of. Got our little scrap piece in there, just the correct dimension as hinge that we're making, and we're just gonna put it over just exactly one board width in addition to that from the groove that we just cut. Now we can put a few screws in that just to make sure it stays put. And then we can saw completely through and our jig is done. Going to make a little sample here just to make sure everything is right before I use the final board that I want to make a hinge out of. Press the end of the board up against that little tab that's sticking out there, and then just move it along, slot to slot. Once you get the next piece, you want to leave it the last board you put in there, and just do the next one. There you go. It's basically a finger joint at this point. To make a hinge out of it, we've got a couple more things to do. You can see it's a bit tight, so I'll probably adjust the blade width just a smidge to make sure it's loose. Here's my final board. Now we're shooting for just 2 grooves and no excess, but apparently I misjudged that a little, so I'll trim this down a bit. I just want it flush, and I'll flip that around and select the next board from it. Okay, so they fit together. I'm going to give this a quick trim so I have the final design that I want. Not necessarily size. This is a project that I don't need a specific size for per se, but I want it to have a certain look. So I'm going to give this a trim right on the edge there. Get rid of that little tiny tab on the end. Trimming both of them to the same dimension, so have them ready. And they fit together fine. Next, we need to mark out the center where we're going to drill a hole and insert our pin for the hinge. Trying to get it exactly to the center, and it was off by maybe 32nd of an inch, so close enough, close enough. Snap a little divot in there for the drill to follow. Go over to my drill and clamp them both together so they don't move while you're drilling it. this drill all the way through. The last thing we're going to need to do is put a round over on our hinge. It should be a round over equal to half the width of, or thickness rather, the thickness of the board, so we'll end up with a nice circle on the end of it, just like that. There's one with my sample piece. Should always do a sample just to make sure things are working okay. Lost a little chip there, but it's going to work fine. And that's how the hinge will operate, so let's just put the pin in and we'll be done. A little bit of a tightness in there, but I think with a little sanding, we're going to be just fine. Overall, I'm quite happy with it, and I hope that educated us a bit. I know I was learning how. That's the first hinge I've made, so thanks for joining me today, and go make yourself a hinge.